Chris, we're live. And remember, we can edit this or, chop off the beginnings or ends or something if we say something really dumb or whatever. But, part of it is I think saying dumb stuff is kind of cool because people like the authenticity of that sort of stuff. So,
No, I think getting it wrong is just as important as getting it right.
yeah, 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 exactly. Okay, so you want to do the introduction then? Table talk.
Introduction. Well, this is our first time recording our conversations. We've been doing this for a while now.
Yeah,
And honestly, I think this is our opportunity to see who else thinks like us, see who else has the same kind of
yeah,
thought process and the
yeah,
same values and the same desires, I guess, as us when it comes
yeah.
down to this. So, yeah, I mean, I wanted, I don't know if we want to go into names or not, but, I'm Chris.
Chris
And
there. I'm Scott.
yeah, and
And
we want to well, for this episode, as our first episode, want to talk a little bit about creativity and how important it is.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm Scott. So I consume way more than I create. In fact, I consume a lot. And my thought is Chris and I were talking through numerous previous conversations that we did not record that we should probably start to go bias just a little less consumption and maybe a little more creation. And so that's what we're here to talk about. So, okay, I'm going to start it off, Chris. I'm going to just be the interviewer for a couple seconds, actually.
Okay.
So, what's the problem? Why not just consume and get fat? I mean, that's the American way, right?
Well, it's very easy to start consuming. I mean, when you consume information, doesn't matter what it is, you feel justified because you say, I'm learning something.
Yep, yep, yep,
I'm feeding that brain, stuff's going in there.
yeah,
But what good does that do to the world? Good does that do for yourself? What good does that do for your family or anyone around you if
right,
all you do is consume?
yeah,
You
yeah,
need to produce, and everyone does to a certain extent
of
produce in
course,
their lives. I mean, you go to work, you do whatever you need to do there. You've got your family relationships. You help out your family when they need it. You drive your kids to the doctor, to school, whatever it is. Those are all things where you're adding, obviously, to the lives around you.
right,
But you've got this brain, this God-given, nature-given, whatever you want to say, brain that you have that allows you to do something beyond just taking information in. You
yes,
can put it through some filter in your head and have something else come out that is different than when it went in. And maybe you're adding to the sum of human knowledge. Maybe you're just going to write a book or just make some silly thing out of cardboard, whatever it is. You're going to add to the human experience by doing that. And that's where I think, you know, the meaning of life is growth. The purpose of life, I should
yeah,
say, is growth.
yeah,
And growth in all aspects of life.
yeah,
And creativity is a big part of that.
yeah. I agree, actually. I totally agree, actually. And then just to get this out front, I'm definitely a God guy, so everything I say and do is going to be coming from that perspective. And I think you're probably not, definitely not at the level I am actually. So it's going to be kind of awesome because we're going to be starting to get some very different perspectives. But it's funny, even with those differences, we still end up agreeing on a lot of things, which I think is kind of cool.
Everyone needs a value system to go through their life.
Yeah,
And, whether that value system comes from God and religion or from society or from good parenting or wherever it comes from,
yeah,
that is one of the things that holds a society together is
right.
having
Yeah,
principles and beliefs that are aligned in value. And I think that's a big part of it.
yeah, that's exactly right. So, okay, so I'm going to go off on our first tangent. So, I was watching uh, Donald Trump the other day on the Joe Rogan show, and he was talking about the weave. I don't know if you're familiar with the weave that he was. Well, that's what we do. We do a lot of weaving around and stuff. So think of this podcast as the very curvy road. We might go straight for a little bit, but we're going to be weaving around like crazy. So let me share something with you actually. So it's a story of consumption, but I just got these new. I'm addicted to tools because tools for a dude are awesome because I can make and I can create stuff. And and here's the thing, Chris. The only reason I got these clippers is because I have a 3D printer over here and I just wanted to clip off the film. You're supposed to clip it at a 45-degree angle, so it's a little point, so it'll go in there. And so, a regular $6 pair of clippers just wouldn't do it for that, So I had to go out and buy like this $30 pair of German engineered clippers. And it makes me feel super good. And so I'm assuming this is kind of a consumption thing, right? I mean, I justify in my head that I'm going to use it for creation, but this makes me feel really good. So, do you have any kind of thoughts on that or
On tools, I guess, yeah, it is a form of consumption. Maybe it's an excuse that you're going to use it to create, just like consumption itself is an excuse. But uh, I'm less worried about the tools now. If you kept buying tools
why do
and
I
didn't
kind of
actually
have a
make anything,
I actually have a little bit of an addiction to tools,
yeah,
actually. So yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and getting something more expensive and nice. This is something that when I was younger, I would have said, just buy the $6 pair, and when it breaks, buy another $6 pair, and when it breaks, buy another $6 pair. Now I'm of the assumption that it would be better to buy the $30 pair from the beginning. First of all, it won't break.
yeah.
Second of all, you'll value it more, which means you'll take care of it better.
Yes, yes, yes.
And it will do, hopefully, 1 to 10% better job at whatever it's supposed to do than the cheaper pair.
Very likely, very likely.
So yeah, it really is a matter. It kind of falls into that minimalist mindset of not getting everything. I tend to buy five of something and use one or two of them, and the other three just sit in a closet and never get used.
Oh, interesting.
So I'm a
Okay.
pack rat when it comes down to it.
You're a pack rat. Okay, I guess I'm a pack rat too, actually. But there's something. So I agree with everything you said, but there's something else. It goes beyond that. There's a certain. I don't know. Did you watch Adam Savage at all or anything on his Tesla?
Not much recently, but he comes up on my feed once in a while. Yeah.
But he talks about tools, and there's something about like something really nice that makes it very pleasurable when I make stuff because I'm using this really nice tool. And there's a there's very much a pleasure. In fact, I might be willing to admit that I might get more pleasure from the tools than the actual creation problem, not the problem, sorry, the creation itself. And that's what I'm hoping that this podcast will help me with, and I think you want some help too, actually, is that I'll be more focused on the creation of stuff. And so I've been planning to do a YouTube channel for months. Actually, it's going to be Build with Scott, and I'm going to like teach people how to make stuff and build stuff in electronics and how to solder and all this sort of stuff. And I've been delaying and procrastinating for months and everything. So when we talked about doing this podcast, I'm like, this is going to be great because this hopefully will encourage me, force me, make me actually create content in other areas as well too. So I just kind of excited about this.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. It's actually taking action, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah, right.
instead of analyzing and planning and going into that analysis paralysis problem that people have, particularly when you think about something a lot, you start to think about this piece and this factor over here and that thing over there, and pretty soon you're juggling 15 things in your head that are slowing you down. And in essence, yeah, they're all meaningful, but they don't necessarily stop you from moving forward,
Yes.
right? Or they shouldn't stop you from moving forward.
Yeah.
You go ahead and start and then fix it. Oh, well, this thing, I should have thought about that in the beginning. Well, I didn't. Well, hey, now it's time to fix it.
Yeah.
And I'll course correcting on the way is, I think, a more valid mindset to be in. As long as you're moving, you can course correct. If
Yeah.
you're not even moving, you still haven't even got the inertia to move yet.
Yeah. 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 So I don't know if you know this or not, but I used to own I live in Arkansas. I used to live in California where you live, right? South Orange County. And I had a video production company for 10 years. And one of the things in marketing that I really discovered is you have to sell in to what people already believe because it's going to be hard to convince people unless kind of the thought already is in there. And one of the big rules that we always had, and I made this mistake over and over and over again, is that I assumed that what I wanted was the same thing everybody wanted. So if I wanted something, everybody else is going to want it. And that's the biggest mistake in marketing is that you're not your customer. So you need to make sure that you're aware, and I have no idea where this is going. I'm just doing this weave thing actually, is you got to make sure that you provide value to that other guy and it's not just you actually. And so in this podcast, I'm hoping, I'm hoping that in some way I'm going to break that rule again because I'm making this for myself. What I'm hoping, Chris, is that maybe there's another people or other people that are going to be aligned that are going to find value in what we're doing, right? So we're sort of, in my mind, we're doing the worst marketing mistake of all, is we're what are we're creating the solution before we actually know what the problem
Or,
is.
or pandering to our own interests in the hope of finding a reason or a cause.
Yeah. And at least we admit it, right? So I mean, maybe that's okay, actually.
Well, you know, part of what I think is critical for anything is putting thought into it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So creativity is thinking, but it's thinking with certain information, certain constraints, whatever in your mind that allow you to come up with ideas and thoughts, and eventually come up with a way to implement or innovate and actually put them into practice,
yeah.
right? And I think that's the we love to talk, we love to think, we love to create ideas,
Love
but
it.
that's not the same as actually putting something into existence. And that's what we're talking about, is actually putting something out there in the world.
Yeah,
And I think everyone has it in them to do something, at some level. And
yeah,
to defaulting to that and not get stuck in just the thinking. The thinking is important. It's an important step. And if you're not doing it already, you need to get to start doing that.
yeah.
And I hope that our conversation helps spark some of that thinking.
Spark something, encourage somebody to just build something. And it doesn't matter, in my mind, it doesn't matter what you
What
build.
what, what what's your Pearl saying?
Oh, I just started this. It's like uh, what I want to do is I want to implant this little grain of sand in your brain that hopefully will turn into a pearl of wisdom. That's my fantasy anyways. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see if that's possible. So, you know, I'm I think we're on turn, but do you have anything else? Like, what's your primary purpose for this podcast?
So, well, for me personally, it's the idea to put something out there
Okay.
based upon all the thinking that all this thinking for years that's gone on the back of my head. The
Yeah.
only outlet's been talking to you or to some other people on the side, and this is
Yeah.
an outlet for that. But I
Yeah.
think what I'm hoping would happen is that other people listening would be able to take those conversations, take those thoughts, add to their own,
Yeah. Yeah.
and come up with something new, come up with an idea, come up with a thought. Maybe see something we don't see that you and I talk about, right? We know we're missing a lot of stuff, and when we
Oh
talk
my
about a
gosh.
topic,
Yeah. Yeah.
the more you know, the more you know you don't know. But
Yes.
it'd be great if we hear from other people that, oh, what did you think about this? And you know, I'm a little cocky. I'll probably go, yeah, I thought about that. But what happens if I hadn't thought about that? What happens if it's truly something I'd never thought of before, and
Yeah.
it gives me an epiphany and just changes my mindset so drastically? It's like, wow. From now on, I can't think of that in the same way as I did before.
Yeah.
That to me is pretty darn amazing. I
Yeah.
like it when that happens. When you
That's
keep learning, and then one piece of information triggers just like this landslide of information in your
yeah.
head, and you see things differently.
Yeah. It's like a breakthrough, or it's like trying to figure out a very complex like combination lock or trying to crack a safe. And it's like just that last number, and you hear that little click, and you're like, oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. And then, so I'm going to do the YouTube thing right now, Chris, if you don't mind. So if anybody's watching us, like just put down in comments, I mean, your thought, what are you going to make? What are you going to build? Because I think my thought is I'd love to turn this into community, try to make it bigger than just us actually, and engage, other people. Like, tell us what you want to talk about. Tell us what you want to make. Tell us what you want to build. And if you're totally compelling and we think you're cool, we'd like you to join us on a podcast, particularly, right? As long as you're absolutely entertaining. I remember, do you remember Howard Stern, the shock jock?
Yep.
I used to listen to him, and his thought was, and his kind of message is that as long as you're absolutely entertaining, you'll be on the phone as long as you want to be on the phone. But the moment you get boring, we're done. Like instant hang up, no finish your sentence or anything. So I don't think I want to be that extreme, but man, I'd love to just get other ideas and build a community. It's
Hmm.
awesome actually. Chris, you got some stuff up on the background that I want you to talk about. It looks like you've got some musical instruments, some hats. Um, tell me about those. Did you make those or?
No, no, none of that.
Oh,
These are most of these are Hawaiian ukuleles.
okay.
I got into ukuleles about 16, 17 years ago,
Oh my gosh. Okay.
and I started. I got we my wife and I went to Hawaii on a delayed honeymoon,
Yeah.
and we and I got a ukulele because I was like portable instruments. I mean, all over the walls, I've got instruments that are small and portable, and
Okay.
I can't go through a day. I can't go through 10 minutes of sitting still without humming a melody or making up a melody. So,
Oh,
I think I told you I've been making flutes recently out of PVC pipe and
yeah.
whatever it is. And so
Yeah.
most of those are musical instruments. And then the other thing about, oh, maybe about 20 years ago, about the same time frame, I got into hats. Right. And it's not because I don't have hair. It's just because I like hats. People don't wear hats anymore. I like it. I like hats. Sometimes I like suspenders, things that people don't wear anymore. To me, they're kind of there's a nostalgia associated with them. There are other feelings and thoughts that go along with things from our past that I find really interesting.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting, actually. So musical instruments, hats,
I
suspend.
found the Farmer's Almanac at the local library. 1923 and 1823, obviously reprints, but
Oh
I
my
just thought it was
God.
kind of cool to have these, documents from the past.
Yeah, there's something about connecting to your ancestors. I know when I was younger with my parents, I don't know if you had the same thing, but especially when I was like, middle to late teens, the my most important task was try to get away from my parents, you know. It's like because they're horrible people. And then I think what happens is at least for me, like when you're in that 15, 16, 17 year old, I think God takes your brain away from you and you start to do really stupid stuff. And then maybe when you're 35, he gives it back to you again. And when I got my brain back, I started seeing my parents in a totally different light. I don't know if anybody else has that experience or if you had that experience or whatever, but it's just because you come from a very different culture, right?
Well, yeah, I'm half Japanese, so but my mom was never a traditional Japanese person. She was always her
Yeah.
own thing. So, um, I don't know. When I was growing up, I was an only child for almost 10 years, and
Oh,
then my sister was born. My mom would work. She'd wait till I got home from school. She'd go to work. I'd take care of my sister for 4 or 5 hours. My dad had usually had the night shift working at the FAA. So I would often there'd be gaps in time where I'd be taking care of my 2-year-old sister
yeah.
for 6 7 hours at a time. So it never. I don't know. I never had the kind of crazy phase in teens that you probably are thinking of.
Oh, I had crazy phase. There was a time that I was into like black powder. And do you remember those Estes model rockets? Are you familiar with those?
Nope. Wait, oh,
Okay.
you mean like the rockets we shoot up in the air with
Yeah,
a? Oh
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
They made them like A, B, C, and then there was boosters and there was different
yeah.
ones. And then I discovered black powder. And so
Yeah.
there
Hmm.
was like a delinquent, like an old delinquent, probably 25, 3 or 4 houses down, that sold me a pound of black powder for $100. And what I would do is on the booster stages of these rockets, it was designed to flare up at the very end to ignite the second stage, right? It would shoot fire out. Well, what you could do is you could put black powder in there and pack this stuff up and put like duct tape around it, and it would be a major explosion actually. And when I got that, I thought that was pretty cool. And so I did that for a while. And then this delinquent, then he sold me something called phosphorus. I'm not sure if you're familiar with phosphorus,
Hmm.
but it's like burns very hot and it's very dangerous. And he's like, you probably don't want this. And I'm like, oh yeah, I do. Yes, I do. And I'm like, "Man,
I remember some kids in school, mixing gasoline and detergent and other weird things like that. But that wasn't my crowd. But I remember the kids that were doing that.
Yeah, and it's crazy, being a kid. And it's like, please, kids, don't go do this, right? Without just don't. I think we grew up in a different generation now. It's like, man, kids they can't do anything anymore. I mean, we would literally be let out for hours at a time with no supervision, and you would never think of doing that now.
That's an American thing, I think, more than anything else. Because I remember we went on a trip to Germany, and there was this hike up to this area where there's the kind of river going through this gorge, and people were sunning out on the riverbanks, and kids were running up and down these really steep slopes and areas that were, you'd be biting your teeth here, or you'd be biting your nails here if you were watching it.
Yeah,
There, it's like no, kids have to play. If they get hurt, they get hurt. It was really kind of what I would call an old school mindset here.
yeah,
Kids get hurt. You jump on your bicycle, you ride a mile down to the 7-Eleven on the street.
yeah.
Nowadays, my daughter's out in the front yard, and my wife's freaking out because that there's no adult supervision outside, and I'm like, hmm, you know,
Exactly, exactly. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I mean, because I was just very reckless and we blew stuff up and all the time. And then we would build these ramps out of woods and jump our bikes over it. And we'd like lay down underneath so we could watch the bike fly over the top of our head. And, basically
well,
a lot of stupid stuff.
exposure to pain and and bad things is one of the things that makes you, more resilient. So from that viewpoint, this does seem like a bad thing to a certain extent.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Now that said, it's a different world than it was before, right? I
It's a more
mean,
dangerous world, I think, right now.
where's the danger from, though? Do you think the danger of random shootings, killings, kidnappings is more than before? Seems to me the danger comes is from other sources now. It's from things that have been fed to us with technology in many ways.
Well, it's so funny. It's so interesting because I just said that thinking you'd just say, "Oh yeah, it's more dangerous now." But I really have no justification for that. I just kind of like saying that. So
Yeah, yeah. You talk about kids getting kidnapped off the street.
yeah,
And we know it happens
it
because
happens.
the
Yeah,
news tells it to us.
yeah.
But how many times is it happening given the size of our population? Is it really a problem to the level where we need to be freaking out and pulling our hair out over this, or is this more of a like, well, this will get ratings in the news, so it's going to be on for the next 3 weeks straight. We're going to talk about it. In which case, now it's fed in something which proportionally is very small is being fed into our brain a lot.
Yeah, yeah, I think that happens. I think there's no question that with social media, things just happen much faster. When I grew up, there was no microwaves, there was no social media, there's no computers, there's no iPhones, there was none of that. In fact, when I was growing up, I don't know if you remember, but the phones you had to like use a rotary dial.
Rotary phones, yeah. But see, actually, I was just thinking about this. I don't know why I was thinking about. I was thinking about phone lines and how and home phone lines.
Yeah,
And I lived in Japan for 5 years, and in Japan, it's a totally different thing. You have to buy your phone line from the phone company, and nowadays it costs you $400 or $500. In the old days, it was like $1,500, $2,000 to buy a phone line, and
to get the service.
well, you bought the rights to a phone line, and when you moved out, you disconnected the line and you took it with you to wherever you were moving in the country, and then you connected it there. Now that doesn't mean the phone number didn't change, but it means you owned a right to a phone. I guess it's almost like having a radio license or something. You own the right to it,
Oh, that's
and it's very interesting the way they do it over there. So cell phones and stuff got really popular because you didn't have to get one of these licenses or you didn't have to buy a phone line. So when cell phones came out, they were adopted really quickly. But it just occurred to me back when AT&T, when Ma Bell was huge before the U.S. government broke them up, you had to buy your phone from AT&T. And it weighed 10 pounds. It was a brick. It was rotary. I mean, and you didn't have a lot of selection because there was no market for other companies to make phones because it was a monopoly.
Oh my gosh, I know. I don't remember that because I didn't live in Japan, but I do remember the concept is like you didn't really question what kind of phone. It was the fact that, oh, I just got a phone. Like, that just that worked. And I remember calling on the phone, and it's like long distance was maybe halfway across the country, and it was like you couldn't hear it as good. You'd have this delay a little bit and everything. It's like,
I remember it was $4 a minute to call Japan.
woo, that is
Yeah.
crazy. Now you can go on Zoom, get face to face free, basically, other than just your monthly whatever Zoom expense is or whatever like that. That is
But
crazy.
the other interesting thing here is we now have unlimited minutes, so it doesn't matter much now. But back when you had a certain number of minutes per month,
Yeah, yeah, right.
if someone called you, it ate into your minutes.
Yep, yes, right, exactly.
In Japan, if someone called you, it didn't impact your minutes. You weren't charged for someone calling you.
Oh, so the fee was on the person making the call.
Yep. And to me,
Oh,
that made so much more sense because why should I be paying for someone calling me? I figured one of the best ways to gaslight someone was just call them every day and waste their minutes. So
that is crazy. It's like, having this conversation, I'm remembering when I was a kid, it's like, what a different world we're in now. It's like it's truly a different place, actually. I mean, sometimes I just wish it would like roll back to, you know, simpler times, but yet I don't want to like give up any modern conveniences. Like I don't want to go back 30 years and give up my cell phone or give up my computer.
you know, I wonder because that's where your consumption's coming in, right? That's where
Oh
you're
yeah, that's why I
consuming
consume.
media.
Yeah, of
So
course. Right.
some of these people who go on a what do they call it, a digital diet,
Yeah.
where they stop for a while. I think there's some aspect to that maybe getting back to nature, just getting back to non-digital world might be a valuable thing.
I think that's super important because I know that if I get cut off, or like here at our house, for instance, and my wife is worse than I am with this, but if like the internet goes down for even an hour or two, freaking out starts to happen really quickly. And it's like, wait a minute.
I forgot what it is. One of the very few Twitter posts I've ever done was during a blackout. The thought came to me is there's no. It's amazing how time expands when you don't have the internet.
Yeah.
How slow things go, and it was like the power to slow down time. It's not that math equation. It's the fact that you don't have power, no electricity.
That is crazy. The thought is that maybe I should intentionally put myself on a fast.
1 day a week, 2 hours a day, whatever it is. You know, it's this just made me think of something. There was a company several years ago that was finding they were having a hard time with interactions with people in the company. This is before everyone went remote. And what they found out was that people were emailing when they could just say, go talk to the person.
Yeah, right.
And so they made Fridays no email. The only email allowed was with customers and clients outside the company. No
Right,
internal email for that
right,
company. And
right.
what they found was by dropping email 1 day a week,
Yeah,
overall internal email for that company dropped like 40% overall
that's
because
crazy.
people started to talk to each other again.
Heaven forbid you want people to talk to each other. Yes, exactly. That is so crazy. Yeah, yeah. And that's not to say that Zoom and the phone is not super great things, but it's like, and especially during COVID, we kind of stopped talking to ourselves, right? Talking with each other, actually. Because there's so much fear. I remember just how much fear there was like in COVID. And for some reason, I didn't buy into that. I don't know, maybe I'm stupid or something like that. But I pretty much did whatever I wanted to during COVID with like no thought of any repercussions of like what bad things could happen. So I don't know if that was smart or if that was dumb or if that was brave. It's like I just didn't know. I just couldn't be inconvenienced with COVID.
Well, I didn't realize it at the time, but I got it pretty early on and
Yeah,
didn't,
yeah.
yeah. And once I realized I'd had it and how little impact I felt from it, it kind of changed my viewpoint as to how serious it was, at least for me.
Yeah, that's
Um,
crazy because
you know,
I
I, I was worried that, oh my gosh, I've got health problems. If I get sick, and I'm going to go to the hospital, and the hospital's not going to be able to take me because the hospitals were all mad,
Yeah,
over. All that went through my mind. So I was careful, but at the end of the day, I still got it. I think I got it from my gardener. So
that is crazy. I remember when we were in South Orange County, which is where you are now. Um, we went to the gym called the Renaissance like all the time. And I remember I got it about the middle of January of 2020 before they even knew what COVID was. And
mm,
and let me tell you, it kicked my butt. It was like 6 weeks of like, and then you'd go to the gym, you talk to people, and you're like, man, I don't know what this thing is. It's like it's kicking my butt for sure, but it's not a flu, it's not a cold, it's something else actually. And I don't know what meaning that has or anything, but after I got it, I kind of felt a little bit safer because I figured, well, you got it, so you got some sort of immunity. And normally at the time, I don't know if we talked about it, but it was the thing was flatten the curve, right? So you gotta isolate, you gotta stay by yourself because so you don't overwhelm the healthcare system or whatever like that. And as a general rule, I don't like being told what to do, actually. I'm a little
I don't
bit
think Americans do like to be told what to do.
exactly, especially by other people that are, that act way smarter than you are. But I doubt if they're any smarter or not.
I don't mind people saying this is the way we need to do things, this is a better way to do it. But what really upset me about the guidance that we got was how arbitrary it seemed and how no one thought about second order consequences. First order
Yeah,
consequences, everyone makes the decision off of first order consequences.
yeah,
And maybe that is so important you need to make that decision. Keeping people out of the emergency rooms was so important that they had to make decisions.
yeah,
You can make an argument for that. But the second order consequences are the things, kids not being in school.
yeah,
The fact that LA County had so many kids who just lost hundreds of days of school
yeah.
because of this.
That's
Here in
gonna.
Irvine, they were down for maybe a week, maybe half a week, and then
Oh,
we
really?
and we were online after that. So
Oh,
so we had like 2 or 3 months or whatever after the everything shut down. We had about 3 months, I guess, of online schooling. Then the summer, and then by the next year, they had it dialed in. And so we had and so I look at that and go, schools schools that are better off for whatever reason will tend to react to those situations better. Schools that are not as well off are going to have a harder time. And the balancing the mental health, balancing the education, balancing all that, and the fact that the number of kids who got sick was so minuscule compared to the number of older people that got sick makes
yeah,
you really wonder what the value was there.
yeah,
Unless they're saying, hey, we got to worry about the parents getting sick or the
yeah,
grandparents getting sick
yeah,
from the kids. That's actually an argument that I had heard a couple of people say, but in general was not the go-to argument.
yeah,
And we got to keep the kids safe because they figure that's an easier sell. It's an
yeah.
easier sell, except in this case it wasn't true.
It wasn't true, actually. Yeah, and I wanna tie this into something else that because I don't want to go down a COVID discussion, but but I do want to tie into the fact how important critical thinking is. And this is like one of the things that just drive me crazy. It just seems like having a pretty good understanding of marketing, I do know how easy it is to manipulate people in very subtle ways. And there's whole books on it. I mean, there's everything's a game plan and everything's a name and it's done. And it's like you don't want to be stupid because there's no doubt that COVID killed like I don't know how many, like I want to say at least 1 million people, right? Maybe more.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's a serious thing.
Yep.
But it was sold as this thing is the devil of all devils and it'll totally kill you. And so I think in my mind, what I was trying to do is gather information on a scale of like, well, how dangerous is this, right? I mean,
Well, I did some calculations during COVID. I
yeah,
went online and I looked at the death rate in LA County,
yeah,
and then I got the death rate for prior years in LA County. And the numbers, the general numbers of daily deaths aren't as high as you would expect. Even
yeah,
just through age and the like. People tend to live a relatively long time.
yeah,
But what I found was during the peak of COVID deaths, we were at about 3 times the death rate of what you would have on a regular basis.
Oh yeah, it was a real. It's serious, right?
So there was, I mean, now in absolute numbers, I forgot what it was. It was in the thousands. I want to say it was 10,000, whatever the number was. But when I calculated it out, it was about 3 times as
Okay,
high.
yeah, it's a
And
serious
so,
situation. Yeah,
so that to me says something. And if the fear is that that number goes up because the healthcare system can't handle taking care of the people, right?
yeah,
It's not that we can't take care of people. I mean, at the time there was because there was a respirator problem and all the other stuff,
yeah,
and we didn't know what the heck it was. But it's not just that we don't know how to take care of them. We don't have the facilities to take care of the
yeah,
numbers at one point. If
yes,
you spread it out, the whole flattening of the curve, if you
yeah,
spread it
yeah,
out, we can handle it. But
yeah,
if you don't spread it out, then you end up with basically more people dying because at the time they need the services, they're just not
yeah.
available.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And now it's easier to say maybe we didn't make the right decision. But in all fairness, there was a lot of fear going on, right? And
Yeah.
in my mind, I'm like, okay, wait, I understand this is a pandemic, but how bad is this thing gonna get, right? We didn't know what the top of the curve looked like at that point.
Well, and my problem, I don't have a problem with science changing its opinion because
Fine,
that's
yeah,
what
then you
science
learn new
does.
stuff. Yeah,
This is what we know today. We make a decision.
yeah,
Tomorrow we learn something. Oh crap, we were wrong. I mean, look at smoking, right?
yeah,
Doctors were saying smoking is healthy for you because you take deep breaths. Well, it turns out that wasn't true. Things change, and that's fine. It's the idea that because people hated the idea of what they were being told to do so much, that whenever there was something that changed, it's like, oh, you're flip flopping, you're
yeah,
wishy washy,
yeah,
and it's like
yeah,
maybe so they just have more information than they had before. I'm okay with changes. Uh, the concerns I have are they need to know when they're making a guess, and they
yeah,
need and they so the whole 6 feet,
yeah,
right? To me, that was driven by the whole 2 meter conversation, which happened in non-American countries.
yeah,
And what they were really finding out was you need to be closer to 10 to 15 feet away to really get away from the spray of
yeah,
someone sneezing.
yeah, right,
But
right,
then again, you go to countries like in Asia where they wear masks on a regular basis.
yeah,
You wear masks to protect others from you being sick. You don't wear
yes,
masks to protect yourself from others being sick.
yeah, yeah,
And so that was the problem is like they try to spin it here as you need to protect yourself from getting sick, so you need to wear a mask. And everyone's like, well, I don't want to wear a mask. It's okay. I don't mind if I get
yeah,
sick. No,
yeah,
no, 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 no. The whole thing was you don't want your loved ones around you to get sick.
yeah,
So if you're, yeah, and we can't tell if you're sick. That was the other thing, right? Most of the people we
yeah,
can't tell if you're sick,
yeah,
so you need to wear the mask.
yeah.
And they didn't spin it well. And they tried to at times, but they just never got that message across. So
They
it was all about me, not about others.
Yeah, and I tend to go down the me road more than I would like, actually, because my thoughts on that is I didn't understand completely, but I remember, I'm gonna do a weave again. I remember like getting stuff from Amazon, and you were like, oh, you weren't sure if COVID was on the box, so make sure you leave it out in the sun for like 8 hours, right, to kill off, and you'd go out and flip it over with things on and wash your hands and all this other sort of stuff. So I don't know how helpful that was or not. And I want to tell a story, right? Because during this whole time I was doing jujitsu and we were like rolling around with dudes sweating on each other, no mask, literally like 1 inch from each other. So my thought was, look, man, if COVID's going to get transmitted, there's like no better way to transmit COVID than that actually. And we made just a rule that, look, man, if you're sick, just stay home, right? Now, I don't think that was good, but here's the point of my story. So I was talking to my master. This was outside, and we were outside, and we were just setting like kind of in like a truck, you know how you fold the tailgate down and you're sitting there, it makes a nice little chair. And it's so interesting. Within 3 minutes of doing that, we had two really extreme confrontations with two different people actually. One person was like, "Oh my God, you guys are awesome, waving a red flag around, freedom." You know? And I'm like, okay, it's maybe taking a little bit far, but all right. And then another lady came by, basically like stopped her car, rolled her window down, pulled her mask down, and proceeded to berate us for over a minute. Well, like, you effing this, you are killers, you baby killers. I mean, you this, you that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're such extreme, thoughts. And I told my master, I'm like, oh my God, if she would have seen us an hour ago, what we were doing, she'd be freaking out. So it's can we, how can we inoculate ourselves against these just radical thought process on both sides and bring some reason and some critical thinking into it and a little bit of study and actually understanding the level of risk actually because these people were in my mind both of them they were just out of their minds, right? I mean they were just
It's
both of them
it's
crazy.
all about trust, I think. And it's about trusting other people to not be to not have negative or evil intentions, right? When you see someone do something that you disagree with, that you think is wrong,
Yeah.
are you assuming that they're trying to do something bad and evil? Because I do think, if the woman was yelling at you because you weren't wearing a mask, then she's attributing all these negative bad things to you and what you're trying to do and making a judgment call about you as a bad person.
Yes.
If
Yeah.
she had come from the viewpoint of you're actually not a bad person, and for whatever reason you're not wearing the mask, then she could approach it and say, "Hey guys, wouldn't it be better if you wore a mask?"
Yeah.
Right? And that would have been a different approach. So, uh, in my mind, it's a matter of trusting the people around you to be decent people. This actually goes to something that I thought about when it comes to the happiest countries in the world. The happiest countries in the world, and the Scandinavian countries are always on the top of the list. If you go to any of the countries that tend to be happy, you'll find that most of those people trust their government.
Yeah.
They trust the people around them. They trust their government. They trust society is going to take care of them. They
Yeah.
trust that, it's people aren't out to get them.
Yeah.
And I think, we have a very individualistic viewpoint, right?
Oh yeah.
Individual rights.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that actually means not agreeing with the government because the government, our history with England and other governments in the past,
Yeah.
we don't trust our government as Americans.
Yeah.
And so you'll find that countries where you trust each other, trust the government, tend to be happier because they're not worried, they're not stressing, there's not all the cortisol being caused
Yeah.
by you worrying about what the other person's doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the hardest thing to do because that is a fundamental difference in the way Americans think as a group, right? And you'll see this all over the place. If you want to talk about people getting offended because you didn't use their pronouns, it's like,
Yeah.
did you mean to offend them, or did you just not realize that that was an important thing for them, or that was something that really they wanted you to do? But and that's why you have to, when you meet someone, you have to say, "Oh, I'm a he, him, or a she, her, or a they, them," and it's silly in some ways because that puts more onus on you,
Yeah.
but it's also it's a way to try to avoid having the non-trust issue come into play and getting yelled at.
Yeah, and I think we have to be very responsible and very carefully because I can let my emotions get away from me sometimes. Because I know I've had several of these things where people say, "Oh, you're just so offensive to me and everything," and I'm like, "Lady, listen, you would know if I'm offensive. Right? This would be a very
Well,
different thing going on." And
we can get a little metaphysical here and just say that the offensive the offense is in the person who perceives the offense.
yeah,
You
yeah,
could be as offensive as you want. If the person receiving it is not offended, they're not offended. You haven't caused offense.
yes, right,
Right? It's like comedy. Comedy can be some of the most horrible, some of the most non PC things said in comedy, and people will not be offended. But if you were to say that in standard
yeah,
conversation, they would
yeah,
get offended. It's
yeah,
all in context. So if you're not offended, if you say hello and they get offended, you've been offensive. If you insult them and they don't get offended, you haven't been offensive. It's
yeah. I guess, yeah. That's so hard for me to think because
This is why intent is tough for me.
tense,
What
yeah.
is the intention of someone? It's like, does it matter what the intention of them is? We can go off
Do
on
I
on
do?
we can
Yes.
go off on hate crimes because I have a whole thing on hate crimes being wrong. Not the committing hate crimes; those were wrong. But the idea that a hate crime is worse than a regular crime to me is
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting thought. It's like intention.
If the intent,
See,
if you're interpreting intent to make someone less guilty, I guess, or less responsible for something, like they've got mental problems, so they weren't aware of what they were doing. Okay, I can kind of see that. But if you're interpreting intent to make it a stronger punishment, then I got a problem. If you kill somebody because you want their money, or you kill somebody because you're racist against them, you still killed somebody.
yeah, they're still dead.
To me, it's the same crime.
They're still dead.
I don't have, I understand they're a horrible person because they're racist and all of that, but I don't necessarily see that is that there should be a difference there. And so you're bringing intent into it. But I think as soon as we start doing that, then everyone's responsible for their intentions, more so than the actions. Your intentions are more important than your actions in those situations.
I mean, yeah, yeah. I don't want to argue this too much because it's very unclear in my mind. But I do think that if I'm more of an evolved person, which I am not evolved person actually, at all, but if I want to strive to being that, then I should technically, and I have a lot of guilt around this, I should technically be the adult in the room and modulate my behavior and actions to some extent. I mean, there's a limit where I'm not going to, but to some extent, if it doesn't, cause me too much trouble, to make that person feel a little bit better. And I'm going to give you some examples. Like, so I moved to the South. So I'm not in the deep South, but I'm in the South. There's very different interactions here than you see in New York or in Los Angeles. I mean, people are much politer. They'll say yes, sir, no, sir. They'll hold the door open for you. I mean, it's a cultural difference. And at first I thought it was weird, but I'm like, I kind of like it. There's something there's something refreshing about that when you try to go out of your way to treat people well. But you don't go all the way, but there's a certain level. So, and I don't know where I have no idea how that ties in with creating stuff. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm trying to make myself a better person. I don't know.
Well, I think manners are something that still exist in parts of this country.
Yeah.
And usually when we've gotten and lived in big cities and the like, and we got busy and there's too many people around, and we can't take the time to have that relationship with people
Yeah.
around us, those manners fall by the wayside. And you see it in driving, you see it in people shopping and just how they interact and how they talk. And I think ultimately you end up with people going crazy in the McDonald's because they don't have McNuggets or whatever. I mean, you end up with that type of crazy thing going on
Yeah.
because the manners have fallen away.
The banners have fallen away. It's like, so it's interesting. So where we were, South Orange County, there's a lot of traffic. There's the 405, and it's 6 lanes going this way, 6 lanes going that way, and there's a lot of traffic and a lot of cars, actually. There is nowhere near the traffic. And in fact, if you're driving along here on Interstate 40 or any highway, you're expected, it's in the culture, like if somebody's trying to merge in, that you will move over in the lane to get out of their way, actually. That doesn't happen in Orange County, actually. I mean, I tell myself, my God, and people, they don't get on. I mean, I've seen people stop. I mean, they're just disasters, right? Because they're used to a different culture that people are super nice, actually. I'm like, man, if you drove like that in Orange County, you would get destroyed, actually. You get zero tolerance. And I'm just starting to think to myself, maybe this is a better way, but it always seems like as soon as you start cramming more rats into the thing, they just start biting each other and fighting each other. So I don't
Well,
know, but hang on, one more thing, and then I'm gonna let you go. Can I become a better person? Is that the right move to become a better person, to be more tolerant, right? For certain things.
is tolerant better?
Stop asking these hard questions.
Well, I mean,
No.
like if that one book I told you about that I like, the Courage to be Disliked,
Yeah.
right? I personally believe that we should be very tolerant of everyone.
Yes. Yes.
Tolerant is not the same as accepting of everyone,
Oh, just oh, I see it the
right?
same thing.
So I must tolerate a lot of bad stuff in the world.
Yeah.
It's part of the world, and I accept that these things happen, and I will tolerate them.
Yeah.
Whether I accept them into my life and make them part of my life, that's my choice,
Oh no, that's your choice, actually. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so when it's being forced upon me by either the left or the right, it doesn't matter who's going to
Doesn't.
be forcing on me. You're going to get resistance from me because I don't think I should have to accept it, right?
Yeah.
To me there's a difference between tolerating and accepting. Here in LA, we've got the Museum of Tolerance,
Mhm.
right? And um, I remember going there. Oh, forgot how old I was when we went there. But you walk through this one tunnel at one point where they're throwing all these racial epithets at you as you're walking down it, and I'm kind of laughing at it as I'm going through it. But the intent is to show that these are the things that people say and do to make you different, to show dislike for you, to show I'm listening. I'm going, you can have whatever opinion of me you want. I will tolerate any opinion you've got of me.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I have to accept that that your opinion has any validity at all,
Yeah.
right? So you don't like me, great. You don't like me. You think I'm horrible in some way, great. Hopefully you will change your mind over time as you get to know me better. But if on the other hand that never happens, that never happens.
Yeah.
I want to present a positive image. I want to make sure that I'm considerate of you as an individual,
Yeah. Right.
but I don't necessarily think that that means that I have to give in on my beliefs or ideas, as long
No.
as they don't impede on yours.
Yeah. 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 That's the general rule. Is like you're allowed to do anything you want to do, but then we start tapering that off as what you want to do starts to interfere with other people's rights, right? So, and then of course there's a million laws about trying to figure out what that balance is, and other people, pretty much everybody wants to move the slider to a different position, So
Well, the other thing is, so back to the driving you mentioned, right? It's like, to me, being considerate of others when you're driving
yeah,
should be a core principle of driving.
yeah, I like it.
So
That's a good thing.
So when you're driving, you're in the first or second lane and it's a 4-lane highway and somebody goes from the fourth lane, says, "Oh, I got to get off right here." And they cross all 4 lanes, you know, maybe without even signaling,
Yeah,
and force everyone to slam on their brakes. That
yeah,
is an inconsiderate driver.
that is inconsiderate.
And honestly, I think that there should be some kind of price to pay, even if it's just social ostracism or whatever it is. But there should be something about that that's negative. But what's happened is, driving in the big city is tough. I don't want to have to go and get off at the next exit and come back and do all that kind of stuff. So suddenly people start acting in ways that are not polite to each other, not considerate of each other, and that becomes the norm. Instead of the exception, it becomes the norm.
Yeah, it becomes the norm. Yeah. And I think like I was that kind of driver. I mean, I wasn't that inconsiderate, but it was pretty, just to make it clear, it was about me and where I want to go first and you become second, right? And when I started to come here, I started seeing that people were actually nice. I mean, people would literally let you in, they would wave you in. And I'm like, what's going on? This is like something I'm not used to, right? I mean,
But when that happens, it's like, if I'm going to be merging into traffic and I can tell it's moving faster, I will accelerate faster than I would normally. I
yes,
don't
yes,
accelerate the same every time. I'm thinking, oh, they're moving pretty quick. I got to get up to speed quickly, so
yeah,
I'll actually hit the gas more. Other times, if I'm on a road and it's slow or the traffic's slow, then I adjust
you have
based
to
upon
adjust.
the consideration of the drivers around me.
Yes, yes, yes.
But this to me is just, this is one of the things that I need to overcome in other parts of my life. Is I think about other people's time and I don't want to impose on their time, so say I don't do all the polite niceties that I probably should,
Oh yeah.
because I don't want to get in your way. I don't want to take away from your time. You're a busy person,
Oh,
right? So instead of following up with you every couple of weeks and saying, "Hey, how's it going?" Like I'm like, "Oh, I don't want to get in your way, so I'll
yeah,
just follow up with you every year."
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And it actually comes. I'm sure there's other things in my psyche that are causing me to do it that way. But one of the things is I don't want to impose on your time.
Yeah. I have the same feeling or whatever. And I know in California, at least where I lived, you didn't really go knock on your neighbor's door. I mean, here it happens all the time, right? It's just common. And they'll bring you food or they'll come invite you or hey, come to church with me or what. And it's just like, dude, what are you doing at the beginning? And then after a while, after a couple of years, I'm like, this is actually kind of nice. I mean, this is better than the way I used to do it. And slowly I'm changing the way I view things actually, just partially because there's less people. I just live in a small town. So it's kind of crazy. So is that better? I think so. And at the same time, if you try to do that in like Los Angeles or something like that, like if you're merging on and you put your turn signal on, like sometimes people will create a little distance for you. Most of the time they won't. They'll speed up because you're like, no,
Hmm.
you're not getting in front of me. You go behind me. And I would say 9 out of 10 times you put your signal on, the other person will totally back off, actually. They'll just totally, oh yeah, come on, buddy, get in there.
You know, the speed of life
Yeah.
that you live is important, right? And when you're in a big city, the speed of life is just everything's moving. There's so much input going on. So much stuff happening around you that it's you need to kind of shut off your senses to protect yourself.
Yeah, because you get
I
over.
remember when I lived in Tokyo, and I would come into Ikebukuro Station, I think it was, or and I think was it 3 million people a day go through that train station,
Yeah.
or some stupid number like that.
Yeah.
I would walk in and I would look down at my feet, and I would not look up until I left the building
Oh my gosh. Okay.
because it was just so much sensory input from thousands of people around you. So I knew the directions I had to walk. I had to go at this gate and doing all that kind of stuff. But literally, it's just way too much input. You wonder why people wear headphones all the time. Well, that's now the way one of the ways to protect yourself from all that sensory input. You
Yeah.
think about what's his name, Dustin Hoffman in Rain Man, and how he
Yeah.
when he was in the casino and it was bothering him and the like. That's kind of even for a normal person. That can be what life is like in a big city. And I think we all learn to shut things off. Where if you're not in a big city, you stay open.
More open. Yeah. Yeah. So then that's a skill to learn. You say, look, I've got to protect right now, but then I can open back up. Some people just never open back up. They just perpetually remain closed, actually.
Well, I mean, the other thing to think about is the sheer amount of information we have available to us
Oh my
today
gosh, it's
versus
just
before, right?
overwhelming.
I mean, yeah, growing up when you had the TV with the twist knobs, right, and you had whatever
Yeah.
5 stations to watch, and
Exactly.
then cable TV came out, and then suddenly we have so many choices of cable
I
TV
know.
now. We have so many choices of streaming services. The amount of data and the way you can subdivide the data into smaller and smaller
Yeah.
themes means that you can now feed information nonstop, and we've gotten used to it. I mean, the idea of binge watching 13 hours of a TV show is stupid,
It's
really, when you think about it. But we do it culturally all the time.
all the time, actually. And we sit there and eat snacks or do whatever.
And you wonder why you're kind of annulled and was it inured to people coming and knocking on your door. It's like when someone knocks on my door, it's weird,
It's weird. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And that's it because we're stuck in a world where we don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
We're actually expecting input from all these other sources that we've got, and we've dulled our senses to the point where that's the input we need. Not only that, we now need those inputs to get crazier and crazier and crazier. You
Yeah.
look at the TV shows today and kind of the topics they have, the amount of sex and nudity and other things that are
Oh
in
my
there
gosh,
versus what
it's
we
horrible.
watched.
Yeah.
It's all getting more and more kind of enticing. All the little things to entice different feelings and emotions in us.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe what we're trying to do is actually good for humanity, good for society, is that, you do your thing, but you come home and you shut the TV off and you go out in your garage, your kitchen table, and you make something. Maybe put some music on and you just stop. consuming so much.
I had a silly thought. So one of my projects this summer was there's a little section of my front yard that's almost useless because it's kind of far away from the house.
Yeah.
Uh, and I went ahead and put in some raised beds and I put down some wood chips and I have a couple of chairs over there. And it's still not used much, but it's a little nicer area.
Right.
And I was thinking, what if I turn that into a place for people to hang out?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, the idea of the man in the house, I guess, so that would be the traditional sitting out in the garage and working in his garage. You know, being able to walk up to him and say hi to him and talk to him and say, well, and shoot the breeze with him and see what's
Yeah.
going on. We don't do that.
No, we don't do it. Not as much. No. No.
I remember one guy who used to be in the ukulele club with me years ago, and he liked to make bass ukuleles, whatever I think. And you could walk over to his house. He was a surfer, so his garage had surf stuff. But then he had a workbench where he would just make whatever he was working
Yeah.
on,
Right.
and you
Right.
could talk to him for hours at the workbench. I mean, it was just
Right.
so easy to do.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, it's one of the things I want to make now. I was watching videos earlier this week about how to make a bass guitar
Yes.
out of a walking stick. So it's a walking stick that's also a
Oh,
bass.
interesting.
So I'm gonna look into doing that. We'll see.
I think that'd be kind of cool. So let me ask you a question, because I think this is if you don't have this, I think this is the first thing that you should create is do you have a good workbench?
Mm,
Because I think that's the first thing you should make,
I don't, and I need one.
a good workbench. Yeah, and it could be to start as simple as one of those little 6 foot by 2 foot folding tables from Costco, to start out with. You can
Yeah.
do it and fold it up. But there's something about a workbench. There's something about organizing your tools. And I don't know what it does, but man, it is like cool. Like, that, oh, this is my place and these are my tools and I can actually make stuff. There's something really appealing about that.
There's, one of the things you were talking about getting nicer quality tools.
Oh yeah.
Because I have cheap quality tools, or a lot of them are, I don't track where they are, so that when I need them again, I just go buy another cheap set.
No, no,
So,
no, 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 no,
and
no.
then what ends up happening is eventually, I kind of clean things up a little bit, and I'll find I've got three of these identical pliers. Uh, it's I took one of those metal shelving units that you have in the garage sometimes, and I put it I split it into two, and I made an L bench out in the garage to be able to work on, and I
Oh,
put
you
my
got a
3D printer
workbench.
out there and stuff like that. However, in the course of cleaning the house, it's now surrounded by boxes, so I can't get to it.
Oh,
So
okay.
I've got a bench out there, but I can't get to it.
That's kind of not the idea, actually.
No.
Um, that's fascinating because I think you need a space to create. So
Hmm.
I'm going through, what am I going through actually? Oh, it's this book called Atomic Habits. I don't know if you're familiar with
Hmm.
that or
Yeah.
not.
Clear,
And
right?
yeah, yeah. And basically the key point of this book actually is willpower will only take you so far, right? I mean, you can white knuckle and grind it out for a little bit, but if you want to have something with longevity, you need to create habits, actually. And the environment controls us like way more than we'd ever expect, actually. So it's very important that you set your environment up in order for you to create something.
Did you ever listen to talk radio when you were out here?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember she got into trouble, Dr. Laura?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And she would get people calling in saying, "Oh, a woman, a married woman would talk about hanging out with her male friends, or
Oh
a
yeah.
guy would talk about hanging out with a married guy would talk about hanging out with other women."
Yeah.
And she would be like, "Don't do it." And they were like, "Oh, but when nothing ever happened,
Yeah.
this whatever." And it's like, it's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is, if you're in a situation where something could happen and you could end up having an affair, it might happen. If you're not in that situation, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, right, right.
right? Don't tempt fate by doing. And to me, that's always been the an extension of what you just said. You want to make it easy to do the right thing. You want to make it
Yes.
hard to do the wrong thing.
Yes.
Right? If you want to run in the morning, put your shoes by the bed. If you
Y-
want to, if you whatever it is, if you want to eat healthy, throw away the bad food in the house.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is brings to a really important point, which means, and I'm really learning this, is I have very low willpower. And that doesn't mean that I can't do great things, but I've got to focus on the environment instead of just trying to white knuckle it and willpower it. And that just makes me feel really weak. But I think it's really true, right?
Yeah, I think your willpower goes up and down, right? And it's where your focus is. If you can focus
Yeah.
away from whatever's drawing, tempting you.
Yeah.
And so like when you're in flow and you're working on something and
Yeah.
you're whatever it is you're working on, you don't even notice you're hungry. You don't even notice these other
No,
things.
no.
Yeah, you might forget to go to the bathroom until you absolutely have to, right? The
Yes.
point being you all the little things that are distracting you don't have an impact because your focus is somewhere else.
Yeah.
But
Right.
when your focus isn't there, when it's spread out, when it's not at the high level, suddenly all the little things do matter.
Yeah.
So, those hunger pangs, the desire to eat chocolate, to have a beer, whatever it is, all of
Yeah.
those things suddenly take on bigger meaning or bigger impact on your life.
Yeah, it seems so important. It's like having that cookie right now just seems to be the most important thing in the world, you know?
Yeah, well, I had lunch earlier and I had a pretty good sized lunch and I still wanted to eat something.
Yeah.
I felt like I needed to eat something, and all the stuff that was healthy in the house, which is like celery and carrots and stuff, wasn't appealing
Oh,
to
of
me.
course not. Celery doesn't do it for you.
So so I was like, I ended up eating some chips, and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, but I had some chips.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I counted them, so I only had 6 chips,
Okay.
but
There you
still,
go. Okay, that's
but
that's better
but
though.
yeah, but the idea was, I shouldn't have needed to have that, but for whatever reason, I wasn't in flow doing something else. And when you're playing a game, when you're learning something new, when you're out hiking, whatever it is that you do, your mind is, your focus is totally in that.
Yeah.
There's no, there's nothing to draw any of the focus away
Yeah.
from it, right?
Yeah.
You're
Right.
keeping, and I wonder if that's really what it is. It's not willpower, it's focus.
Yes, yes, of course. Of course. That's exactly what it is actually. So I'm taking this training class, been doing it for a couple of years with a ex-Navy SEAL. His name is Eric Davis. And he talks about, oh, you think that SEALs have so much willpower and that we have so much what is it, intestinal fortitude and we're so yeehaw and gung-ho and everything. And I'm telling you, we are at times, but it's like most of the time that's not how we get stuff done. It's having a very clear plan with a very clear purpose, a very clear why, and move into flow state actually. And so it's interesting to think in terms of, he said when he was going through buds, um, that he was happy and content, even though his legs were burning, he's puking up blood, but still he's like, this is where I'm supposed to be, right? And he goes to the fact of just saying, like, man, pain, it's just a sensation, right? It doesn't necessarily mean anything except for the meaning that you put on it. And I'm like, well, yeah, you're a SEAL, dude. I'm not. I'm just like a normal dude, right? I haven't I haven't gone through all this stuff. But he's like, I'm telling you, anybody can do this actually. Anybody.
There's, whatever discomfort you've got from it, be
Yeah.
it pain or hunger or whatever it is, right? That causes a sensation. But if your focus never lets it rise to a level where it distracts you,
Yeah.
then then you can. I would say, when you talked about his legs were burning and all that kind of stuff, yeah, you probably didn't even notice it because he was so focused. After the fact, you go, "Oh crap! All this stuff happened,"
That's right.
But
Yeah.
I would argue that, you know it's like when you're cold and you get up in the morning and you're cold. If you
Yeah.
get up and do something, you probably don't even notice that it's
Right.
cold.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I notice, like here, it's gotten cold enough in the morning where I actually sit in my chair with a blanket in the morning until I wake up fully, and I was like, if I just went out in the yard and started working in the garden, I'd probably be warmed up in a matter of minutes.
Yeah, because you're moving. Yeah. This is so fascinating because the potential. is in all of us actually. And
Hmm.
think that I think that we're consuming junk food for our mind, too much sugar, too much food, too much crap on TV actually, that we've lost who we are. You can I went to the zoo a long time ago. This was like 20 years ago. I saw a lion. Like this is king of the beast, right? And he was in a cage and he was beat down. And I'm like, man, this is not who you are. I mean, I don't think he understood what I was saying actually. But I'm like, this is horrible. This is horrible. It's like, okay, here's my perspective. God made you to be a predator, right? You are king of the beast, and you're not right now. And it's inside of you, and you don't even know. You just got so beat down. And it's like, that's one thing I want to do is I want to encourage you. I want to encourage me. I want to encourage everybody that, man, you've got greatness inside of you, and you can do more than you think you can do. I love that kind of talk.
Well, I'm going to refer to that book again, the one that I talked about.
Yeah.
What was it? The confidence of being disliked. What
Yeah.
was it?
That's
The
something
courage
like
to be
that.
disliked.
Yeah.
There was a whole section in there. He says there's the your purpose of life, or the purpose is to be self-reliant and to live in harmony with others.
Okay.
And one of the things about living in harmony with others was to do good for your comrades. And comrades in this case is your fellow man,
Yeah, your
basically.
neighbors, your whatever, right? Exactly.
Um, and he really talked about, you need to stop judging people on their ability and start judging them on their potential, because everyone's got potential.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when you look at someone who's smart, when you look at someone who's charismatic, when you look at someone and all that kind of stuff, and you somehow value them more than someone who isn't those things, that in and of itself is a fault in you.
Possibly. Well, are you valuing the person or are you overvaluing or are you valuing the skill? Because that's you can value those differently. Because not
But
everybody's made the same.
but the skill is a skill. I mean, why are you value when you if you value a skill, then it doesn't matter who has it. But you're actually placing value on a person, and the idea here that he goes into, which gets really very woo woo and kind of hard to follow,
Woo-woo.
is that none of your skills, none of your experience, none of your trauma, none of that matters. You are who you are. And so you need to accept others for who they are, which is not about their abilities, but about their potential. It's honestly tough to follow. So the first part of that book I loved. I thought I agreed with like 90% of that book in the first two-thirds of that book. The last third of it got to be a little harder for me to really grasp. I think there's a lot of good good philosophy in there on how to live life or whatever, but it's a little tough in the world we live in today, and kind of the materialism we have and how we value capabilities over possibilities. That I think is where a lot of this comes into play. So, you know, looking at someone for what they're potentially capable of instead of what they're currently capable of is really tough.
Yeah, I mean, I do like that your potential because I want to encourage people with that. And at the same time, your level of skill, what you can do is what the market pays you for. Like, I don't want to hire somebody because I believe they have the potential to do it. It's like I they can do it. That's what I want.
But if you believe this and you think that people have value in what their potential is, then you value everyone equally.
Well, I
What that means in the way salary, I'm not talking about. I'm just talking about how you value people, because that means everyone can do everything. I can do anything.
everybody
Which,
can't do anything though. Like
but I
they're
want to believe everyone can do anything. And truthfully, barring physical or other limitations,
yeah.
you can pretty much do anything. You
Well,
want to start talking about the edge cases, where you can slam, yeah, the 5 foot tall person slam dunking a basketball. That's going to be a
good.
lot
Yeah,
harder for
good
them to
luck with
do than
that.
the
Right.
7 foot guy. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean you can't play basketball.
No, he can play basketball. He may love playing basketball, but he's never going to play at a very high level. He just wasn't invented for that purpose.
What if he got really good he got so good at playing at a 5 foot level that you could just weave through the larger people? I mean, not having the exact skill set that everyone thinks is perfect for something doesn't mean you can't excel in that.
No, you can do well, but man, we live in a cause and effect world and there's physics involved in things. So it's very easy to dilute yourself into thinking that you're better than you are. And let me tell you something, jujitsu is where people dilute themselves all the time, actually, because they think I'm going to come in and I'm an athlete and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And there's this like 60-year-old fat guy over there that I'm just going to slam his head through the wall, actually. And it doesn't happen like that. And in fact, that old dude just owns this guy. Not only just owns him, but is just toying with him, playing with him. And he's operating at like 10%. This guy's like sweating. He could murder him at any second. And that's when reality really sets in. So I don't think that we can ignore reality. I don't
You do
want
it
to
all the
say
time.
it.
That's the norm today, because if I accept reality, I have to accept that my thinking and my principles and my values that I've built over the last however many years are wrong. It's
Hello,
much eas
yes,
it's
yes,
much
yes.
easier for me to bend reality to fit my view than it is for me to change my view to meet reality. That's the world we live in today.
It's always
And
easier, but reality always wins, man.
no,
Every time.
that's the problem we have today is I don't like your facts. Let me go on YouTube and find the echo chamber that will give me the facts that back up what I say. I can find the channel that will give me the information that backs up my thinking. That's the world we live in today. There isn't an absolute truth, there isn't an absolute factual evidence based viewpoint that we all accept. I mean, if you go back to the days when science was funded by the government, when Bell Labs was creating stuff, World War II, 1950s, all of this kind of thing, and you will see that there was the country had a huge amount of respect for science.
Yes, yes, yes.
Then science got into the softer side of things, and once that happened, you began to cross over into people's beliefs about themselves, about religion, about emotions, about all that sort of thing. When that started to happen, then people started to say, I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if I agree with that. And then when that begins to happen, you find ways to avoid the facts. I would say up into the 80s and 90s, we were pretty still,
Yeah,
we still pretty much valued the science and the facts and fact-based thinking. Today, it's not so much. The emotions and the feelings, my identity and all that sort of thing is now more important to me than accepting information and trying to put it into my worldview. Instead of looking and saying, "Oh, I wonder how that fits in my worldview," it's like, "Oh, that's wrong because it doesn't fit. It doesn't automatically fit into my worldview."
yeah. Well, this is the argument that I want you to behave a certain way because I'll feel better if you do that, actually. And I will tell you, jujitsu doesn't work that way. Jujitsu is true as true. Because people would come in and say, "Oh, I learned this new technique on YouTube, and I can submit anybody, and I'm going to do this." And I'm like, "Cool, dude. Let's go to the mat and let's try it. Let's see."
Well, so I heard someone was arguing something about gender on YouTube, and I heard this argument, and it's the best argument I've heard from the left as to why we should be using pronouns and the like for people.
Okay, all right.
And the idea here is like, if you were to say something that you knew were to upset someone,
Yeah.
would you actually say it? So
Oh,
if
sure,
someone
all the
comes up to
time.
you,
Yeah, yeah.
so if someone comes up to you and let's say you do have non-traditional pronouns,
Yeah.
they don't know that, and they use what you would call traditional pronouns for you, and you get upset because it makes you feel bad, right? And you're going, and your viewpoint is, well, I didn't know. And he goes, well, that's why quite often people now introduce themselves with the pronouns at the beginning. And I go, but why should I have to do that? He goes, why shouldn't you have to do that? Why shouldn't you have to do a little bit more work to be considerate of other people around you? What is it about the world today that means you can do things the way you've done them for the past 2,000 years? World changes, things change, society changes. Why shouldn't you have to do that? And that's an argument that I can see someone making that actually, to me, has some validity to it.
I mean,
You
that's
know,
fine. That's fine. But man, I'm telling you, physics is physics, reality is reality. The
but
truth.
the idea is you're saying to the person who's on one side of the conversation here, you need to do more.
Yes. We
No,
all,
no, no, not, and I'm not talking about the person who's already made all these changes to society. They're saying to the person who's the stick in the mud, you need to step up and do more to adapt to a changing society. You cannot stay the way you are today and still fit into society because society's changing. Whether you like it or not, you now need to do things slightly different than you did 20 years ago because society's changing.
well, and here's the thing, man. If it's truly changing, right, then I will adapt.
Mm-hmm.
That becomes the new norm. As much as I don't like it, that apparently then is the new truth, right?
But that's the best argument I've heard anyone make for forcing people who have done things the way they've always done it to have to change.
And I don't have a real problem with that. I guess I just don't think we're anywhere near that point, actually.
No, and I think the recent election shows the pushback against that.
Yeah, yeah. I think what happened is like anything, it's like the ball swung too far to the left. Now it's going to swing back too far to the right. And then
Mm-hmm.
maybe hopefully in 10 years we'll come back to, somewhere in the middle, right? Maybe.
Yeah, if AI hasn't killed us all, yeah.
And hey man, everybody dies. Like,
That's the other argument is like if AI kills us, maybe that's what was supposed to happen.
if the cockroaches want to take over and run the world, it's like
Look at
fair
look
enough,
at look at the birth rate across the world. I mean, we are dying off already.
Yeah, yeah, we're dying off actually. We're dying off. And those things just are. I don't really want to fight against a big wave, actually. What I want to do is I just want to create my own little wave at my workbench by building something cool and like sharing it with my little community. And maybe that is kind of putting my head in the sand to some extent. I don't know. Maybe it is.
I don't know. It's we all have the ability to impact the world around us to
Yes,
whatever extent
yes,
we want.
right. Yeah.
Um, can everyone make massive global changes? I
Oh
don't know.
God, no, 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 you don't have to.
Well, no, who knows? Maybe they can, but that's not the way people are wired, and that's not going to
Right.
happen, right?
Yeah.
To expect everyone to be in that top 0.0001%
They're not.
of people,
Yeah.
that's not the way it's going to happen,
No, it's not going to happen.
right? Um, this idea that everyone has to have a legacy, to me, it's like it's a nice thing to have a legacy, but 99.9999% of the world does not have a legacy. They
No.
have they have friends and family who remember them, and that's about it.
Yeah, and that's kind of a bummer in a sense.
Why?
Well, it's a bummer because when you die, you just end up in a garage sale if you don't have a lot of money, and then if you have a lot of money, then it's called an estate sale. But it's all the same thing, right?
But you I mean your being no longer is on this plane of existence. So what
Right.
does it matter?
Well, I think it
Does
matters.
it matter if one person or a million people remember you after you die?
Yes, it matters to me how many people come to my funeral.
It
I'd like,
matters to you right now as being alive.
yeah.
But when you're dead, does it matter to you?
Well, no, I mean, hopefully, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, these are difficult things. I don't know, Chris. I don't know, actually.
I mean,
I-
I want to have a positive impact on the world.
You want
I want to make people's lives better by making them more capable of making their own lives better.
yes, yes,
I'm
yes,
not going to hand you anything. This is why I don't like handing out things and giving the answers. This is what one of the things I will help. I will walk you through how to find the answer,
yeah,
but I generally don't want to give you the answer.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's because you want to do the work. Now, sometimes you can be a highly paid consultant. You'll just give them the answer as long as they write you a check, right? That's
I
funny.
would much prefer to teach them how to find their own answers, and that's probably why I'm not not that good at a
Maybe
consultant.
that's why you don't get big checks written to you then.
That's right.
That is so interesting. Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the more capable we leave people in this world, the better they can make the world around them, which means they make the entire world better. If you could have everyone just improve their lives by
Yeah.
a tenth of a percent,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
or you make a million people get 100% better, I
Yeah.
would have preferred to have everyone in the world have a tenth of a percent
I think
improvement in their
so.
lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes I get very discouraged. And then other times I get very encouraged by like I'll meet like a high school kid or something like that. And they're building like a little robot or they're building a little thing. And they're like, check this out, because now I learned how to make this little servo and I can make this thing walk. And I can use an Arduino and this little sensor and it can kind of see. And I'm like, I started to get super excited about that. So I'm like, whatever little energy I have, I want to focus on encouraging more of that behavior,
Hmm.
to make something. Because let me tell you something, we got a lot of problems in our world right now. We got a lot of problems to solve, and we need these youngins to be really smart to clean up our mess that we created.
Well, one of them's going to figure out climate change and how to keep that from killing us, right?
Hopefully, yeah. I hope climate change. I mean, they can fix that. They can maybe have a very clean source of energy that's unlimited and free. Like somebody needs to figure out fusion, right? How
Well,
to
you've
make
you've
that
you,
work.
you've heard about those experiments being done at is it Livermore,
No.
Lawrence Livermore Laboratories up in central Northern California. They've they just take lasers and they pump them into I don't know what material they're using offhand, but they superheat it,
Uh-huh.
and they've gotten it to the point where they can get more energy out than they put
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. It's
Right.
good.
Of course, it requires huge amounts of equipment and the like to do it, but they're able to actually pull more energy out than goes in, which has
Yeah.
been one of the problems with fusion and all those type of things
Yes.
for the longest
Yes.
time. And if they can do that, we look at it now and go, it's not scalable. We can't make that work. We can't power the world with that. But
Right now. Right.
you spend 20 years working on that and you see what
Yeah.
happens. It goes to my argument. We do anything long enough, we get better at it, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Yeah.
it's you look at buying a Tesla today,
Yeah.
right? And people go, "Oh, look at it has a smaller footprint on the on the global was it the ecosystem. It has it's more green. It doesn't have as much exhaust fumes and the like."
Yeah.
And
Right.
and that's true, but when you look at how much damage was done to the environment to mine all of the
I know.
materials that went into the batteries,
Yeah.
I
Like the
mean, we've been making combustion engines for centuries now. We've
yeah.
gotten pretty good at it.
Yeah.
So you look right now, and I think when I calculated it out, it's about a 30-year payback on a Tesla to come even when you count the production costs of environmental impact.
Yeah.
It's only about a 7 year when you figure out just the exhaust fumes. But if it's 30 years to pay back, that means you're doing more damage to the environment than otherwise.
Yeah. But you got to start somewhere. You got to
Well,
start at some point.
yeah. So once we've made electric engines for 20 years, 30 years,
Yeah.
right? Once we figured out how to make batteries more efficient, once we figured out how to use the sodium batteries or whatever, I forgot what,
Yeah.
what it is, the all the different other types of battery technology that's out there. Once we get more efficient engines, electric engines, all that sort of thing, I think at that point we might get to a point where you can say it's on par as far as how much damage it
Yeah.
does to the environment. In
Yeah.
which case
Right.
it won't matter. Then you start looking at okay, well then are we reinforcing our reliance on fossil fuels or what? Power today costs a lot more than it used to.
Our costs, I know, I know, and this is one thing I like about Musk, as much as you like him or don't like him. I mean, he's kind of got the vision. You put the solar cells on the roof, you can charge the battery, you can drive your car, and you can charge it from the sun. I mean, I'm like, okay, that seems like a good direction to go. And yeah, there's gonna be a million issues with it.
For half the country, the other half the country, you need to figure out what the actual cost benefit analysis is.
Yeah, yeah, but man, let me tell you something. If you can fix half of a problem, that's a big fix.
Well, the other thing is, and this is where I chime in, is solar does not have to be solar panels.
Yeah, I mean, it can,
You remember the old solar water heaters,
yeah, yeah,
right? They just pumped water through pipes that were in the sun, and they heated it up that way.
Yeah.
I've seen people use tin cans and plexiglass and make heaters to heat the air to use in the Arctic.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And you can actually heat the air in the Arctic.
Well, this is a fascinating subject because I remember I went a long time ago, I went to snow camp, right? We were in the middle of the snow for a week and snow is cold. That's what I learned. Snow is very cold, especially when you're out it, you can't get inside, you're in a tent. But one thing that's fascinating is I remember one day we were walking around, it was a beautiful day, just snowed. It was like 10 degrees outside. And we were walking around in t-shirts and shorts because the sun was beaming down on us. And that's solar. I mean, it's amazing actually. Just the radiation from the sun kept you nice and toasty. Now,
Yeah.
as soon as the sun went down and the wind started to blow, you know,
Well,
things got really
what
ugly.
I saw was this. They take like Coke cans and you
Yeah,
cut holes in the top and bottom and you make these pipes out of them. You spray
yeah,
paint them black. You put them behind plexiglass and you put them in your window, and they will take air from the bottom of the room, go through, heat up
yeah,
through the pipes, and you get hot air at the top.
yeah, yeah,
Right? And you can do this in very cold climates.
yeah,
You
right.
can use. Have you seen the guys making greenhouses where they put the systems underground? And so in the summertime they
Yeah,
pull cool air from the ground. In the wintertime, the same cool air is now warm.
yeah, right,
So,
right.
you
Yeah.
know,
Because you go 10 or 15 or 20 feet under, the temperature is very consistent. I mean, it's pretty much the average temperature year round, right? It just stays.
50 some odd degrees is pretty common, I think.
Yeah, whatever it
Yeah.
is, what climate you're in or whatever. But yeah, that these are all amazing things. And I think we need to move us forward with some of this new
And it's
technology.
not new. That's the thing. Is so many of these things have been known by societies in the past and they've been used. It's just that when we started to mass produce things, we went down certain pathways because industrialization made it easier to do certain things than others. And
Yeah,
now we're kind of rediscovering all these things that mankind has known for a long time.
yeah, yeah. Well, and it's always kind of like, okay, it's a great idea, but how we can make money, right? I mean, so let's just, and then if you can't make money, it's like, well, let's just figure out what we can do to make money, which is, I guess it's good, but sometimes too much money can distort you, right? It can corrupt you or whatever. And then all of a sudden you become selfish. I mean, human beings, and I know I can be very, very selfish. It takes a tremendous amount of work for me not to be selfish. And I have to talk to myself every day. Like, what can I do to help somebody? Because that's not built into my nature.
When you say selfish, though, do you mean self centered?
I'm not sure.
To me, selfish is that negative thing where you choose yourself over others.
Yeah, that's definitely it.
Self centered means you don't even think about others.
Oh, it's probably common. It's some version of both of them.
To me, I think of myself as very self-centered because I don't put myself in situations where I'm forced to think about others.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Whereas selfish means I know you've got your things and I got my things and I'm picking my things over your things.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I don't know. I don't draw a clear distinction as you do with that, but there's definitely both of those in some ratio. I don't know what it is, but I'll think about it.
Because I think selfishness is the one that we dislike because you're actually actively choosing yourself over others,
Yeah.
which I, I,
Yeah.
I think actually everyone accepts is probably okay, but still, it doesn't feel nice and polite and a good member of society. Whereas self-centered just means you never even thought about the others. And even like when we talk about drivers, earlier, I think that people are very self centered, which is why they're inconsiderate. They don't consider other people. It's
Yeah.
not that they're purposely trying to inconvenience other people, they just never think about other
I
people,
just never think. Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so that's a self centered viewpoint, not a selfish viewpoint in my
Well, I
mind.
think it's selfish too,
And,
because
and, and so the idea is we need to get them to be considerate of other people, and they will become better drivers for in relation to others, right? They'll become less self-centered, which means they'll act less selfishly. I guess maybe those things go together that way.
yeah, I
When you're
kind of
self-centered, the actions you take are all about yourself, so they're very selfish and seem very selfish.
well, that happens, man, when all of a sudden resources get limited, right?
Well,
Like,
that's a different thing, though. When you start talking about limited resources, then you are talking about needing to take care of yourself over others.
But everything is limited resources, right? I mean, you're driving on the road, space is limited, right? I mean,
Everything is limited resources, but limited in the impact it has on you, or other things, right? If it takes you an extra minute to get to work because there's more cars on the road, yeah, you're losing a minute of time, but is that something sufficient for you to go and change your behavior?
some
There,
people,
what's the threshold at which it's okay for you to be a selfish jerk?
well, I think people that are less selfish end up getting more
Yes,
some way. It's sort
that's
of
that's
non-intuitive, you know?
that's what's his name? Jordan Peterson talks about being what's the word? Not antagonistic, but not trying to get along with everyone. He's got his big five personality.
Yeah, right. The big five test. I haven't taken it, but it seems interesting.
I've taken it. Oh, conscious. I think it's conscientiousness,
Yeah,
right?
right.
The more conscientious you are, so the more you're considering others, the less. Oh, and agreeableness. That was the other thing.
Yeah,
Agreeableness,
yeah,
right? When you're too agreeable, you don't
yeah,
get the raise, you don't get the promotion, you don't get whatever. When you're less agreeable, you tend to get that.
yeah.
And you would think that less agreeable people would be harder to people wouldn't want to work with them and the like, but
No,
they
not
actually are the ones
necessarily.
who
Yeah,
get stuff done. So
yeah, yeah. And it's part of being a good leader is like, in order to get the maximum value, you got to take care of your people, You've got to make them feel safe, and then they'll stop protecting themselves from you and actually work for you. As long as they know that when you go up, you're gonna bring me up along with you.
isn't that Simon Sinek? Leaders eat last,
Yeah, yeah, which is a very
right?
good thing actually.
It's like the concept being the leader takes care of everyone. He makes sure everyone gets a share, so they get to they get what they need.
Yes.
And then as a result, even though he eats last, the leader eats last. The leader
Yes.
gets more
Yes.
because they took
Yes.
care of everyone else.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And
People need to make
I
that
think
choice.
most I think good leaders do that. I don't
Good
think
leaders do.
everyone who's in a leadership position understands what that is.
Oh no, no,
It's
no,
to
no.
serve others, and then they reap the benefits of having served others,
Yes. Yep. Yep. I think
as
that's
opposed to
the
taking
natural
advantage of others, right?
because people don't like bullies. They bullies get beat up at some point, or somebody's like, no, we're not going to let this bully no more, right? This is you're taking too much, right? It's not fair because
Unless
people have
you're
this incredible sense of fairness, right? As long as I know you're getting more, but it's within the realm of fairness. But when it goes too much, it's like, no, not anymore.
so how do you square that with CEOs getting hundreds of times of the pay of the average worker in the US, where in other countries it's 10 times the amount?
Being a CEO is not easy.
Are they actually adding that much value to it?
Yes, yes, they're organizing and putting things together, actually.
So you're then saying CEOs at countries and in other countries, or companies in other countries, don't add that value
I knew you
at
were
a
going to
10
go
times
there,
factor?
actually. Yeah, I knew you were going to go there.
Yeah, no, I mean, you get what you pay for, but we have a culture where we've got a strata of people who are at the top who somehow get in there. And some of them are good and some of them aren't, but why? Why is that acceptable to us?
Well, I think it's acceptable if the other person really earned it. Like if you look at Musk, I mean, Musk solves problems, right? He actually knows how to get stuff done, actually. So, not, well, hang on, I'm sure there's plenty of people, but a lot of people don't have problems with him having so much money, right? As opposed to, the CEO that has a lot of money, but he doesn't take care of his people. That person is not liked, right? We tolerate certain stuff as long as we think they're good for us.
So most of your tech billionaires, I think we tend to think of having earned their money somehow,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
And they have.
And we accept them being imperfect people.
Hmm.
In fact, sometimes we might celebrate those imperfections because they might make them that might be what made them successful, right?
Yeah,
Steve Jobs apparently was a pain to work for, right? But
yeah. But he moved the needle forward on stuff. I've got several of Steve Jobs' invention in my house.
so I think about about that aspect of it. I don't know about old school billionaires. families that are billionaires versus like the person who started the empire, right? Your
Yeah.
Rockefellers and your and your Morgans and all those types of things. I think everyone acknowledges that at the beginning they did something that got the foot in the door, that
They
got
did
the
something
money.
good. Yeah. And
Um,
now most of those people, they make their money in the shadows and they try to stay out of the limelight. And
well,
as you,
and they figured out all kinds of alternate methods to banking and finance that you and I don't have access to
of course,
that
yeah.
allow them to continue to grow their wealth,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's but you might argue whether or not that those people are worth billions, are actually worth the billions they're worth.
They have it, so maybe they're worth. I don't know. It's
You
like
know,
I don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about that actually. I just use them as a model, and I'm like, what can I create? What can I build to add value to people so that I can improve my financial situation?
well, one of the things when I hear Musk talk is he acknowledges that things are going to be hard. He acknowledges that there's going to be, challenges in the way,
Yeah,
but he's coming from a mindset of like, we'll figure it out,
we'll figure it out. Yes, we'll solve it.
right? And it may be a lot of hard work for his people. They may be working and sleeping under
Tons.
their desks and all that kind of stuff like
Yeah,
that. But
yeah,
the point being, he knows that it can be done,
yeah, yeah,
right? One of the problems that I have with a lot of the way we do work today is we don't expect people to put in that type of effort anymore,
yeah, yeah,
right? And maybe it's better work-life balance, and I understand that. And
yeah. Of
maybe people feel bad having to work those long hours. I get all of
course, yeah,
that. But I think that is a big part of why the US was able to lead in so many industries for so long,
yeah,
is because we had expectations and people were driven to work those hours.
yeah,
Driven either internally or driven externally. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. They were driven to get those things done. And when you allow people to work from home,
yeah,
some people are really good at working from home.
yeah. Right. Yeah,
Others can't be held accountable because there's no one around them to watch them
yeah,
work.
yeah. Right, right.
And I understand why companies want people to go back to the office. It isn't just the real estate anymore. It's
Yeah,
actually the efficiency of the people working.
yeah. Right, right,
You know, you,
right.
you see these ukuleles on the wall behind me.
Yeah,
They're a distraction when I'm trying to work.
yeah. Well, yeah.
Sometimes it's better to get out of the house. Sometimes it's better to get away from your comfort zone to when you want to concentrate on something else.
Sometimes it's better. Yeah, I think you just got to figure out like what your purpose is, what you're made to do, and go do that as much as you can in service of others. And if you do that enough, you'll make some money, right?
When you figure out what your purpose is.
Yeah. That means you discover your purpose. Yeah.
Well, so now you used a word that I think is confuses the issue. When
Okay.
you say you discover your purpose,
Yes.
I realized I don't think you discover your purpose. I think you choose your purpose. You you discover
Interesting.
through self-reflection what your values are, what the principles are, what you believe, your beliefs.
Yeah.
Those are things that you have to think about and you discover what those are. I believe that people are generally good. I believe that education is the best way for people to raise their lifestyle and raise
Yeah.
their abilities. I believe a lot of these things, right? None of those are purpose, right? Purpose is the reason why you want to do these things. And if you're lucky, maybe you can say, I discovered why. But I
Uh,
think in many ways, it's like you choose the purpose you want to reinforce those beliefs, those principles, those values.
yeah.
And and then over time, you tweak your purpose to be something
Well,
slightly different.
yeah. See, I'll never lose this argument though, because you think you're figuring it out, but it's already been figured out, right? You're this pair of cutters, and you were engineered to cut wire, period, right? Which gets to a very difficult time, and I don't have time because I only have a few more minutes left. But I believe that God made you for a purpose, actually. And if you don't follow that purpose, you're not going to be as happy as you possibly could be.
Yeah, I don't think that there is a specific purpose for everyone. I think everyone chooses their purpose. Those who are more self-aware, who are more educated, who have more critical thinking are better able to pick a purpose that will have an impact on the world. Those
Oh,
who are very driven, those are who have a very strong mindset as to what they want to see accomplished in the world, can
yeah.
choose a purpose. Like if Elon Musk wants to, you know, to back up the human race on other planets, and if that is truly his pur- his
That's
purpose in life,
one of them. Yeah.
everything he creates somehow fits into that,
Yeah, somehow.
right? And all the other benefits we get out of what he creates are secondary
Yeah.
effects,
Yeah.
right? The primary effect is we have the ability to build our own power plants on Mars, to actually have the ability to put people up there and have a society up there, right? You've got the rockets, you got the power, the battery, you've got the vehicles. Now he needs to come up with all the ways to grow all the food and all the other stuff that goes up there as well.
Yeah, and I think it's okay to use him as an example, but he's
I,
an
I, I
outlier, man. We got to talk more about the common dude, you know?
yes, and that's the thing is I think a common dude has a much harder time um, stating, expressing their purpose.
Oh, interesting. See, I don't know if that's true or not. Because I
So
know
it,
I talk to people that do like just construction work or they make brick or they do landscaping or something like that. And they
mhm.
know their purpose. They're like, yeah, God made me to make yards for people. I mean, they'll say this. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of interesting. I go, and then I ask them, how long have you known this? They're like, I've known this since I was 5 years old, right? I was out in the yard digging holes and stuff.
So if you were to ask them why,
Well, I don't think they can tell you why.
see, so this to me is when we go back to the five whys,
Yeah.
right? Why do you want to do this? Why is it? Why do you want? Do you think you need to make yards for people?
Because it just makes them happy. It's just what they do. It's like,
Why is it important to make them happy?
well, it's not important to make them happy. They make themselves happy. It's like my cat.
Well, let's go into your purpose. Your purpose is what? To teach people.
Yeah, and I just discovered this like 2 or 3 months ago, actually. And I
Hmm.
kind of knew it all along, and I'm still very resistant to it because I want to consume knowledge instead of creating knowledge. Because as soon as I start teaching people, I've got to actually have a plan. I've got to think it through. I've got to make it presentable to them. And it's
Shall we do the
work.
five whys though of your purpose?
I don't know what the five whys are, but sure.
So
Can we
I'm
do
going to keep
that?
asking you why. Why do you want to teach people?
I don't. I'd rather consume
So why do you feel you need to teach people?
because
Why do you feel that's the purpose?
because God came to me in a vision and said, "This is what you're supposed to do."
And why do you think that's what he chose for you to do?
I don't know. You ask God. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just a soldier, man. I am low level, and I'm like, God, send me. Like you made me for this battle.
So
This is what I'm
it
gonna
seems to me like you've got a what, not a why yet. What you're going to do is teach people.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
You
Right.
don't have a why.
The why is because that's my directive. That's what I was made to do. Like this pair of little cutters was made to cut wire, right? That's what it was made to do by its designer, actually. It doesn't really have a why other than somebody made me to do this. The creator said this is what you do.
Yeah, this is the problem I have with a traditional Western viewpoint of God.
Yeah.
Because at some point you stop asking questions and you just accept the fact that this is the way it is.
Yes.
And to me, the asking of the questions is really where, as human beings, we excel in above other species, right?
Well,
We
I've been
have this
asked.
ability to ask questions. So, I don't mind the idea of a supreme being. What I mind is the idea that that's the answer to a question that's hard.
Sorry.
Yeah, and I mean that's I think where ultimately where my philosophy comes into play is I want to go down to the root of everything.
Yeah. Yeah. The root is God. So in my mind, I think that God made everybody. So God made you. You just haven't figured it out yet, right? Like someday And maybe through doing this podcast, you're going to have an affinity, or God's going to come to you and say, Chris, this is what you're supposed to do. Your job is to make the best ukuleles the world has ever seen. That's your job.
That would be a leap from where I am today to accept that.
Could be. I'm not saying that's the answer, but yeah, yeah. Well, man, let me tell you something. Because can we wrap up in a couple of minutes,
Sure.
actually? Like, here's the thing. I don't understand, but let me tell you something. When God gets a hold of you, you're done. There's no more negotiation. You're just like, copy that. Aye, aye. And I would be the last 5 years ago, if we had this conversation, I would think I'm the biggest idiot moron. I bet you're like, I would be like, come on, you're an idiot. But now it just makes total sense, to me. And through these experiences that I have, I can feel it, right? It's like every ounce of my being is, yeah, I'm supposed to teach people stuff. And I don't want to. I'm like, Moses going to the Pharaoh, telling God, hey, God, you picked the wrong guy, dude. I can't speak. I can't do this. And God said, go.
Yeah. I don't know. To me, I mean, I feel like there's value in everyone being self-reliant.
But we're really not self-reliant. I mean, you're not self-reliant.
To the extent that you can make yourself self-reliant, I believe everyone should be able to be self-reliant. Whether you choose to be or not is a different thing.
Well, see, I don't think it's
But
possible. I think it's impossible to be self-reliant
so you're defining self-reliant as being able to totally divorce yourself from everything, right?
from other
I'm
people.
not.
From other
Yeah,
people.
I'm not. To me, self-reliance is that you need to have a mindset of you can do these things. You can do these things yourself. You don't have to rely on someone else to do it for you. Now, that doesn't mean you don't use other people to do things for you. Someone's going to be better at it than you. Someone's going to know more than you. That's a different thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You hire an expert because you need an expert. If you
yeah.
don't need an expert, you can do it yourself, right? There's very little in the world that you can't do unless you need to be at that 99th percentile of capability to do that one particular thing in that one particular
Well,
scenario.
I mean, example like these, I keep holding these things up. You can't make this. I mean, there's
Sure, I could.
probably you could.
Not as good as that, but
Well,
I could make one that functionally works.
I mean, I guess. I mean, maybe. I mean, then
There's
in that case, you'd have to be making a house, and you have to generate the electricity. You have to grow all your food, and I mean, you have to make your own hat and your clothes and your watch.
and 150 years ago that would have been what I would expect. But the complexity of the world as it is today, I don't expect you to have to take the existing skills from 150 years ago and keep adding to it. That would just be crazy. The amount of stuff people would have to know. We are now in a different environment, so the things you need to know to be well-rounded, to be able to do things on your own, to be self-reliant are a different set of things than they would have been 150 years ago. Right? There are
Yes.
things that society produces cheaply and effectively that we accept as part of what we need. I don't mind that aspect, but I like the mindset that I don't have to rely on someone else to make things move forward. You know,
Well, it depends on
and that's the thing that I think people don't realize is like, oh, I don't know how to do that,
well, what do you
and
move
that's where you say go
forward?
watch the YouTube video. You'll know in 5 minutes how to do that.
Yeah, but that's not self-reliant. I mean, you're having some dude teaching you how to do whatever you want to do.
Well, where do you think the ability to be self-reliant comes from? It comes from learning. And that's where I come into the learning aspect of it is I want people to learn how to be independent, to be able to do things on their own, to not be held up by a lack of knowledge, to not be held up by a lack of critical thinking. I want them to be able to use critical thinking and knowledge and learning to be able to move forward in their life.
Oh, I do too. I have no problem with that. In fact, that's kind of the whole purpose of what we're trying to do.
But to me, that
But
that
don't
comes
call it,
from
but don't
that
call it self-reliance
I
because
drive that from the idea of to be self-reliant, or as self-reliant as is reasonable to expect someone in society to
okay, I
be.
can do that actually. But if you're truly self-reliant, let me strip you down naked and put
Yeah,
you
yeah.
in the middle of the
No,
desert.
I'm not saying you're going to leave society.
Right, right, right.
Right? We're not talking the hermit on the hill.
Okay, yeah. But then I don't think self-reliance is the right word then, or at least if we'd have to define what self-reliant means then.
I mean, dependent on others.
Mm-hmm. Of course,
And
we're dependent on you. Now, how much dependence? That's something to talk
and
about.
that I think is, the fact that you are dependent on someone to the point where you can't make progress. And I think a lot of people do think that way. I can't do anything
Yeah,
about this. I
yeah.
can't do anything about this because it's beyond me. I can't do anything about the fact that I live in a crime-ridden neighborhood. I can't do anything about the fact that my boss at work is a jerk. I can't do anything about this. Those are the things I'm talking about.
Well, in that case, I call that more of like a victim mentality, you know?
It is, but that's where it's like you're relying on yourself to move things forward. You will go out and figure out, you will learn what you need to learn. You will pick up the abilities, the skills, the tools, whatever it is you need, and you believe that you can do that. So you are able to do that.
Well, I
It's
think
when
that's
you,
all good stuff, and I believe that. Just
Mhm.
don't put the word self-reliant on it. I just that kind of strong.
I say because you're relying on yourself to make the change. Without self reliance in there, you would never move. You would just be stuck in your victim mentality.
Okay, I'm gonna. We're, I think I don't like the word. The only thing that's holding me up, because I believe all what you just said, but just I don't want to call it self-reliance, you know?
Okay, well, come up with another word. I'll
I
see
will.
if
I'm
I
going to
like it
try to come
better.
up with another word actually. And doing the YouTube thing, if you guys can come up with a better word, put it down in the comments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you want to question anything we talked about, you want to challenge anything we talked about, feel free to do
I
so.
think
I'm
you
it's fun.
should, because we're just a couple of idiots just chit chat. Bring, let's bring an adult into the room with us. Yeah. Um, this is awesome, Chris. So we should congratulate ourselves. This is our first ever podcast that I've done. I don't know if you've done podcasts before, but this is beautiful.
Yeah,
This is a great
I
thing.
want to, we need to do this on a regular basis.
Yes.
And like I told you, I started to, I made a commitment that I'm going to be writing an article at least once a week on either LinkedIn or some other social media platform. I've been using Substack and some other things as well. So we'll see. I need to hold myself to that. I've got a page of literally 100 things that I want to write about. I just need to sit down and write about them.
Okay, yeah, yeah, you just got to take action. So let's just make sure though that when we put these notes up here, we'll make sure that we link both to your articles if there's some interest, and then link back to my other YouTube channel that's still an idea in my head that actually isn't real yet, but hopefully in a month it'll be real and have some videos up there. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, cool.
Okay. All right, Chris, that's it.
Good talking to you.
Yeah, good talking to you. See you later.
Eat healthy.
Okay, yeah, exactly. All right. Bye.
All right, bye bye.